What's up, guys? Welcome back to the JP and Trav show on the JP and Trav YouTube channel. As always, it's your host with the most, JP. And to the right of me, I have my esteemed co-host, Travis J. Davidson. Travis, how you feeling today, man?
Feeling good. Got the big win over apparently the best pitcher in softball history. So that was great. OU softball is inevitable. Just being in the crowd there today with my buddy Shane. He's my good luck charm. We've only seen 3 sporting events together, and they've all been Women's College World Series games. We've won all 3, so that's my guy to see softball with. So with Jada walking up to the plate, she was 0 for 2. I think it was the only time in her career that she's had back-to-back strikeouts. The only other time was 2021 Women's College World Series against Odyssey Alexander. So she had come off back-to-back strikeouts, and then comes up to the plate confident as ever, as Jade always is, and she's pumping up the crowd. I don't even know if TV caught it, but she's amping up the entire crowd. She finally gets the hit, scores the runs, as they're working through all that. She's back. She's firing up the outfield. She's doing, just incredible. The team it finds a way. 49th straight win. As you can see with the lighting, I might have got a little bit of sunburn to show for it. So I will gladly take the burn if it means we got the win. So
absolutely. And as you see below, man, we're so honored to have Senator Greg McCourtney out of Ada, Oklahoma here with us tonight. Senator, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. We got a W today, so life is good. Got to watch the game with my mom, which is always cool. So it was a good day, and I am not sunburned, so that's just bonus.
Oh man, absolutely. Hey, let's just get started just with a quick question for you. Just give us a little bit of background on you, man. How you grew up, where you grew up, when you started to love the University of Oklahoma, just a little bit of your background, and even maybe how you got into politics.
Sure. So born and raised in Ada, Oklahoma. I am the only member of my family that graduated college that didn't graduate from OU. So that OU is where my parents met. It's where my brother went. It's where my sister went. I got a nephew there now. So yeah, I grew up sooner born, sooner bred. When I'll be sooner dead. That is how it is in my family for sure. So I grew up, my father owned a small business in town. So he was the OU ticket broker. He was the guy that everybody brought tickets to, and he'd sell them. Everybody knew, hey, just go check with him. If there's tickets for sale, he's got them. And so that got me into a whole lot of OU games as a kid. And so, I grew up Jamel Holloway, kind of, watching the wishbone and all that fun stuff. But been doing it ever since, for sure.
I like it. Yes. And so with that, kind of getting into the bill, of course. So walk me through a little bit, just kind of the cliff notes of it. So I've obviously, it's only like 26 pages, I think, something like that. But like, give us just kind of the highlights for the people, kind of set the table for the discussion for the people in the chat and the people that'll be viewing this later.
Yeah. And so let me, I'll give a little nerdy history here so that everybody kind of understands where we started. And that's I actually wrote it down. So 2021, in May of 2021. So Oklahoma legislature, we are only in session from February to May every year. And so the court case that opened the door to NIL happened in the spring. And so we knew we had to do something. So in 2021, we rushed a law, just kind of, it was, hey, here's what we think NIL might look like. And so here's how we're going to have to change our laws to get on board with that. And so 2 years later, nobody saw NIL becoming what it is today. The whole concept of a collective. And, I think when NIL started, we were all thinking Rhett Bomar, selling cars and that kind of stuff. maybe Spencer Rattler and his T-shirts, but what it's turned into today is so much bigger and so much, I guess, more organized than I think I ever thought it would be. And so 2 years later, you kind of look at what we did in a rush in 2021 and realize, man, we're way off. And so that's where this conversation starts. And I would love to pretend that I'm the guy who figured all this out, and that this is really OU and OSU, their athletic departments, their legal departments. They give me a call. Probably it was last fall or last summer. So, I mean, we're a year out now that we've been working on this. And they just kind of say, hey, if we're going to be competitive, we've got to have some changes in this law. And so that's how we started. The first draft of this bill was actually written by the University of Oklahoma legal counsel, and then brought to me. And so then we all talked with OU, OSU. And I mean, one of the things that's been fascinating to me is that it's actually Panhandle State. Can anybody name where Panhandle State actually is? But Panhandle State in Oklahoma, they've got one of, if not the best rodeo program in the nation. And so, rodeos lived on sponsorship forever. I mean, you always had, somebody's name on your shirt and that kind of stuff. And so it's not just OU and OSU. I mean, it's Panhandle State's rodeo team and things like that I'd never, I mean, in my mind, it's just for, the big programs and the sports that are bringing in national championships. But they taught me that I was wrong.
Well, Panhandle State sounds like something that, this 8-game SEC schedule came out. And we always make fun of the SEC for playing Popcorn Tech, in November. We could say, oh, well, we're playing Panhandle State in November. I would not have known that it was a real university. Probably would have offended some people with that. But I don't want to make the rodeo folk mad.
That's never a good idea. But yeah, no, they've probably OU's or OSU one have probably played them in basketball in the early season at some point. It seems like we play a lot of those teams in basketball for sure. But yeah, so that's how this gets started. It was a request from OU and OSU. A lot of the small schools, hopped on and made sure it works for everybody. But it was massively important to OU. You have to do it to compete. If we're going to the SEC, if we don't have this right, we won't be able to compete. I mean, we've seen what A&M's done. Alabama's trying to lead the way. But now there are states that are copying the state of Oklahoma, and across the SEC, people are saying, oh crap, Oklahoma, they've got their stuff together on NIL, and you'll see copy and paste. They'll be passing a bill exactly like this next year.
Well, nice to be leading the way in that, especially being the new kids on the block. So what I found most interesting was the kind of language that blocks the NCAA from really, disciplining, I guess would be maybe a word to use. Obviously not the legalese, but walk me through how that works, right? Because with like a Rhett Bomar situation, right? Like I don't think there could have been a state law that said, hey, NCAA, you can't, rule him ineligible because we decide that you can't. Like, how were you able to get to a point where you say, hey, look, we can limit the reach of the NCAA, and with the current state of the NCAA maybe taken into account where they're not really real strong right now?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and I've got the bill here to make sure I don't say anything way too off base. But so really, where it is, and this going back to the history lesson is, so the NCAA, not very long at all after we passed that 2021 law, came out with their NIL rules, and they are very, very basic. There's it is in many ways the wild, wild west. And so the opinion of, I think, athletic directors probably across the nation is you've got two options. You can wait for the NCAA to come in and let them take control of this, which is never a good option. Or we can take control of it ourselves. And so that's what we've done. And this, it'll be fascinating. I mean, if the NCAA wants to be a problem, I mean, what we've done here, and it says over and over again, that's a great catch. I mean, reading the bill, because these things are hard to read sometimes, but it says basically that a school in the state of Oklahoma cannot be a part of an athletic association that does these certain things. And I'll read through just kind of the bullet points. So no school in Oklahoma can be a part of an athletic association that will stop the ability for students to get NIL or to do NIL. But also no school in the state will allow NIL to be used for recruiting. No, you can't stop collectives from happening, which is a huge part of this bill, is making sure, because that's one of the things we couldn't do before we passed this, is really the schools working directly with a collective was pretty clearly against the law. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but now it's legal.
Well, and with that, the collective now, I think I read, can approach current athletes and prospective athletes, can't they? Kind of, I know it kind of dances through the enticement verbiage and everything like that, but that's the thing. Like, if you're Brent Venables and David Stone comes up and says, "What's your NIL program like?" In the past, theoretically, like, he couldn't really say what the collectives were doing or this, that, or the other. Like, now he can work in lockstep with them. So technically David Stone would be a prospective athlete. But like, walk me through that kind of perspective side.
Yeah, I think, and this is where, I mean, it is gray. And that's, I mean, one thing everybody's got to understand. I mean, these are, we created a box. Like, you get to operate inside of this box. What you do inside of this box is up to you. I mean, it's been going on forever. We keep saying Rhett Bomar. I'm starting to feel bad for picking on him, but I mean,
we can say Billy Sims.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, we've read Bootlegger's Boy.
Exactly. Yeah. This has been going on a long time.
Yeah. And so, we created this box, and it'll be, people will try to find out exactly what you can fit in that box and what you can't. And at some point, people will get in trouble. On the perspective, the one thing it makes it very clear is that it cannot be used to actually provide the athlete with compensation. So if you're a prospective athlete, if you're not actually on campus and on the team, then you cannot be getting NIL money that has been arranged at all from the school. Now, it doesn't mean the school can't talk to you about it. It doesn't mean that they can't connect you with the collective and let the collective explain how they do their operations. There's kind of that degree of separation between the collective and the school where we make it very clear that they can work together, but they are not the same thing. The school cannot actually be paying these players. These players can never become an employee of the school, which is a huge deal. And so that's where you really have to have that collective, where it's a different group, but it's very clear that the school can work hand in hand with that collective. And so really where the line is drawn is, until you show up and until you're on the team, you should not be getting any money from NIL.
You just may know that there might be money once you're on the roster. Maybe, perhaps,
theoretically.
Theoretically.
theoretically,
A
exactly.
lot of things happen theoretically.
I did want to bring one thing up. When I was looking at kind of just the history of it, right? When it initially passed, obviously there were 84 to 4 nays, and then get vetoed because the governor wanted to make sure that he was vetoing basically everything. It was just a matter of timing, until he got his stuff, pushed through. But to override the veto, it went 83-7. Why the 7 nays? Did all those people go to school like in Florida or something like that? Like they don't want OU to have an advantage, or OSU or Panhandle State for that matter? Are these rival rodeo people that are trying to shut down Panhandle State sponsorships? What's going on here?
That's such a great question. The thing that and this was very interesting to me is when you talk to people about NIL, everybody, and you kind of explain, hey, I mean, you put somebody's name on the back of a jersey, they probably ought to be able to get some money off of that. I mean, nobody disagrees with kind of your basic NIL. What has gone wrong is that NIL and the transfer portal showed up at the same time, and everybody hates the portal. Mm. And so you start talking to them and they're like, hey, this is, it's the new world. This is what you have to do. And people are like, no, I hate that portal thing. And just like convincing everybody that this has nothing to do with the transfer portal, that, all the stuff that Lincoln Riley did has nothing to do with this. It's, there's just kind of this anger about, and it really is, it's the portal and the fact that, you leave one year. And I mean, we, on Saturday, OU softball is going to be playing against the left fielder that we were all just, going nuts over, in Oklahoma City not very long ago. And she, hopped out and she's gone, didn't have to wait a year. People just don't like that part, and they tie that and NIL together.
Especially older people, right? Because they grew up with it being a certain way. And they say, you know what, back in my day, what's the line? They played for the love of the game. Well, they also played for brown bags full of cash. So let's not get it twisted. This has been going on for a long time. Pony Express and this, that, and the other, and obviously Switzer and many others. But that's the thing. It's like, this has all been happening, but you're right. Transfer portal and NIL happening at the same time. Ooh, that's tough stuff.
Yeah, really tough. People don't see the difference. I do want one thing that one of those no votes is Dave Rader. Who was the head coach at Tulsa forever. He was offensive coordinator at Alabama for a while, and now he's in the Oklahoma State Senate. And when I had to answer questions from Coach Rader, that made me pretty nervous because he knows this stuff inside and out. And his was absolutely a vote for the good old days. And he actually, when we heard this in committee, the first time I had to present the bill, at the end, he gets in and he debates about the good old days and how, and all of this stuff. And at the end of his debate, he says, so I'm going to vote no on this bill, but every one of you needs to vote yes, because we have to pass this if we want to keep winning games.
What?
And it was just, he knew it was going to pass. He knew it had the votes. He just wanted, one more cry for yesteryear and the way it's always been. But he was before, every time before a vote, he'd come up and he'd go, hey, you got the votes, right? Yeah, coach, I got the votes. All right, well, I'm going to be against it then.
That's incredible.
That's hilarious.
I went to school with his daughter, Kendall, so I know Dave Rader for a long time. That's awesome.
So, but yeah, so that was one of the no votes.
Yeah, we're going to open it up to the chat here in just a second. I'm sure there's plenty of people itching to ask you questions, Mr. Senator. But one I had was, you kind of mentioned at the beginning of our show that you, for a year now, have been in contact really with Oklahoma and maybe Oklahoma State's athletic departments. Can you speak a little bit more on that? Like, how much had you guys been in contact this last year? Is this an every day, every week type of conversation? Explain that process a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I was much more. They have, for lack of a better word, they've got a team of lobbyists. They're not really lobbyists, but they do government relation work. And you got to remember, OU and OSU, it's universities, it's the athletic programs, but they also own two of the major hospitals in the state of Oklahoma. So we do a ton of work with OU and OSU on a lot of different subjects. And so it's mainly that same crew that I've worked with on hospital issues for OU Med, OSU Health forever. So until the veto override, there was very little direct contact between me and the athletic departments. Now, it was fascinating. Once the governor vetoed the bill and everybody got really nervous that it might not actually become law, then you saw the athletic departments. Josie has been to the Capitol. He walked the halls, shook hands, took meetings. It was very, very important to them, and they were really upset. If the governor would have signed it, it was April 24th, and so it went into effect the day that the governor signed it, and so for a month, OU has been ready to roll. And when it got vetoed, I mean, and you just think about it, in the College World Series right now, how much money did Grace Lyons and some of those people, how much did they lose by not having up-to-date laws and still kind of being handcuffed? And I think OU was ready to roll it out. I know basketball recruiting, during that month, it sure would have helped to have been able to, to talk to some of these, because you're trying to grab transfer portal people and put together a team really fast, and the collective might have been able to help a little more with that. So this month delay hurt. It hurt pretty bad. And so once that happened, and once we went back into limbo, that's when you started hearing from people like Joe Castiglione and people like that. And they got engaged in a pretty heavy way. But other than that, it was a lot of legal counsel type stuff, and not weekly, but it all kind of goes in cycles. So there'll be weeks where, I'm working 30 hours in that week with these people, and then the next week I won't talk to them at all. It just, it's a weird world that I live in.
Wow. That's insane. And it's also it's shocking to hear you say that, it was basically for a month, we lost out on a couple of things. It's crazy just to know that, that can have that sort of impact. Let me ask you one more Bedlam related question, since we're, obviously we're talking about OU and OSU. And just in your personal opinion, do you think that this is going to be a situation moving forward as OU is going to the SEC where we don't see Bedlam for a long time? Or do you think it's just kind of, for lack of better words, a pissing contest?
I do not have any insider information on that front whatsoever. I've asked that question, and I've asked it of the president of both of the schools. They both say that they want to make it happen. Whether or not they will make it happen, I have no idea. I think it would be good for both schools to do it. I think OU playing football in Stillwater sells a whole lot of tickets that don't get sold otherwise. So I don't know why they wouldn't want us up there and let us buy their tickets. If they can sell out one game a year that way.
Hey, he's coming out pistols firing. I love it.
I can think of 91 reasons they don't want us coming, but I can think of 91 reasons. But yeah, it's kind of funny how they both say, "Oh, well, we want to do it." Well, if both say they want to do it, why isn't it getting done? Seems weird.
That's a valid question.
So how does that type of process work, right? Like you said, kind of legal teams reached out like, hey, we need to do something about this. And like, how do they, and obviously kind of their, like you said, lobbyists, like government relations type stuff, like they have those relationships with you guys. how was it that you were the one that authored the bill? Like, did they just say like, hey, my guy Greg, he's got an OU polo. He's my guy. He used to go to all these games and all this. So I want him authoring the bill. Like, how does that go to you? Was that something that you were like, man, this is something that I know we need to do, or anything like that? So walk me through that process.
Yeah, it's multiple things. I mean, I'm well known as an OU homer. Walk around the Capitol with my OU coffee mug just to make everybody mad. And so that I think the honest answer to that question, and it's hard to answer this question without kind of trying to sound like you're big timing, but so it was me in the Senate and Representative John Eccles in the House. We are both the majority floor leaders, which makes us the number 2 ranking members. I'm the number 2 guy in the Senate. He's the number 2 guy in the House. We're both big OU fans. We've both done quite a bit of work with OU in the past. So a lot of bills get pitched to me, and a lot of bills get pitched to him. And then we kind of take the ones that we're most interested in, and then they'll kind of move down the list with everything else. And so in large part, it was because you start at the top, but people don't want to vote against our bills because we have the ability to not hear their bills. So if you make us mad, we can actually do something. We try not to, but that power does exist. And so yeah, it's just the nature of being the number 2. I'm being the majority leader inside the state Senate is why I'm here instead of somebody else.
That makes sense.
That's funny. So you say you get handed a bunch of bills and you just kind of pick the best ones. What's the dumbest one that you've been handed regarding OU?
I'm interested.
What's the dumbest one? You got to have something that stands out.
Regarding OU, oh man, I'm sure it is something in the whole. Golly, I've gone blank on the term that gets used for it, but all the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, all the there are a lot of people looking for solutions to problems that are really hard to solve and coming up with some really, really bad solutions along the way. And so I've been handed on that subject, whether it was college campuses or high school campuses or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's like, hey, have you read the Constitution? I'm pretty sure we can't do that. I was like, oh, come on. We've got to. We have to solve this problem. It's like, well,
we just told the NCAA they can't deal with us. That we're blocking them. Surely we can do it to the Constitution. No, that's funny. That's funny, but that's awesome. So, you said they were ready to go, ready to roll this out back in April. Do you feel that there have been any tweaks to maybe their approach since it got delayed? Maybe they thought, hey, we were going to do this, but then, oh, well, now that we've got, a little bit more time because that's got to go into the veto override and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that could be, I'm just looking for a silver lining so I don't cry myself to sleep tonight, knowing that we missed out on a month of work. But is there a situation where maybe we're better off because we had more time to digest it, or was it just a total loss for that month?
Unfortunately, that month was a total loss. Now, like I said, we started working on this in the fall, and it has definitely kind of gone through some iterations. And now we've been through so much I can't remember, but Texas A&M came out, really aggressive last fall with how they were going to do NIL, and I can't even remember exactly what those details were. And so that kind of helped us go, okay, hey, if they're going to shape it like that, then let's make sure that our bill is going to allow those things to happen. So kind of as we saw, and A&M and Alabama, but A&M's the biggest, really they've been very aggressive, and it's helped us to kind of reimagine exactly what this needs to be and what this needs to look like. But no, really, the language has not changed much at all since I filed it. I filed it in mid-January, and I think, I mean, we've changed a word here, a word there, kind of, but nothing significant since January.
Wow, that's well, I mean, so in terms of, again, you passed up, I don't know how many bills in your career, but would you say that this was one of, the quickest, slowest, medium? Like, how long, in your opinion, does it typically take to get a bill passed?
So we got it done in one session, so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
A lot of the big things that I've worked on and the big things that I've done, the biggest thing is a big healthcare reform thing that would bore you and everybody listening to tears if I tried to explain it, but it took 4 years to get it done. And so the fact that we dropped this in January and that we're sitting here at the end of May, I guess 1st of June now, and the law is in effect, because that's a higher bar. Typically anything that we pass doesn't go into effect until October or November. So we had to pass this with a higher vote total so that it would go into effect the day the governor signed it. So he didn't sign it. So the day that we overrode that veto, as soon as we closed that vote, it was an active law in Oklahoma, and that's pretty rare that you pass something with an emergency clause on it, because that's significantly harder. It takes more votes.
Right. That's that's interesting. So on the timing thing, because me being, obviously wrapped up in football recruiting, obviously basketball, baseball, all that, but football is our main topic around here, like, do you think that, or do you know, were you told by whether it was Joe C or Harris or the legal team or anything, like, hey bro, we got Champ U barbecue coming up with a bunch of 5 stars and we're putting together a presentation? Like, we have obviously Stone, Winery, Kobe Black, like at least 3 5 stars coming in the 9th through the 12th, obviously, like next weekend. And like, I have to imagine that in their like NIL presentation to these families and these kids, they're going to say, thank goodness for old Greg McCourtney. He authored a bill, and now we can, this is our new plan. And I joke, but don't you think the timing of that, was something that interested them?
Oh, for sure. And they never went into any kind of detail on exactly what they were doing, but it was very, very clear that the fact that we had to wait a month put them in a hole. Like they had expected this to get signed and they were ready to rock and roll, and then they had to pump the brakes. So I have no doubt. I don't know what it is, but I have no doubt that, the day after this passed, there was something different happening than had happened the day before. But I never asked and they never told. It's, state secrets kind of thing with them on exactly what they're doing. And, so they're not going to tell me. And if they did, I probably couldn't tell you. So
Well, you can tell us. It's just a little YouTube channel. Ain't nothing.
Yeah, nobody's going to see this.
Yeah, Les and Jesse and Richard and all these, the Daring Pastry. We got these people. These are all trustworthy people. Don't got to worry about it. So, no, that's really interesting because, like I said, when you say ready to rock and roll, a lot of it we're used to, there's a little bit of grandstanding, if you will, with college athletics, right? Like specific programs, like you expect like a big press release being like, boom, thanks to this getting passed, we have now rolled out this. We are now supporting this. We are now doing this. Do you expect anything like that to come from OSU, OU, Panhandle State, TU, whoever? Or, do you expect anything like that, or is it just going to be, you think, way more in-house type private conversations with recruits and current athletes and everything like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, how they're going to roll things out here.
How would you do it?
Oh man, so many smart aleck answers that run through my head. At some point, I've got to talk about dry brisket. So maybe this is where I bring in dry brisket. But no, to me, I think I would pretend like this is how OU's rolled and always rolled. And I may be reading too much into it, but to me, if you say, hey, we've got this program, we created it yesterday because we just now got a law that allows us to do it. I don't think that makes, the recruits are probably down with it, but I wonder how mom and dad back home are feeling about that message. And so I'm not sure that I wouldn't just act like this is the way this is supposed to be. It's the way it's always been. This is what we do.
Well, and the way you described it, OU, obviously we're all very biased in this conversation, but like OU was the university, the institution to push for this, right? So with that, at least the pitch can be, hey, we built out this NIL program that we knew would work perfectly. It's exactly what, it helps us lean on our culture, our values, everything like that, without getting too far into a transactional. It keeps everything relational, all the Venables isms that there are. And you can say that and say, so much so that we actually passed a law to fit with it, so that our beautiful NIL program that we built out to be perfect would be legal in the state of Oklahoma, as opposed to, hey, we got a bill passed, and then we looked at the bill and said, okay, what can we build around it? That kind of type verbiage where it's, hey, we're the ones that approached the Oklahoma legislature with a plan, and this is what we needed done. So I'll be really interested, especially with guys that have taken visits. I need to ask a couple of recruits that I know have taken visits in the past, and then how those differ with the NIL conversations of current visits. Because I feel like it has to be different. I mean, otherwise, why would you get it passed?
Yeah, no, I have no doubt that those conversations are different now. Whether or not, you can probably find out. I'll be interested to hear the answer to that question. But I do think you're right. I think it's a good point that, being able to say like, hey, every school in the country is making this up as they go. But we actually have, the leading law in the nation. We made sure that all of this was legal, that we were doing this the right way. You're not going to have to worry about how all of this works. I do think, going back to if you're recruiting mom and dad and not just the kid, I think that's a winning message for mom and dad, that, and you can go in, and I mean, it's very clear in a lot of different places on exactly, how this stuff's supposed to work. And, that's one of the things from 2021 to now. The very first law basically required parents to become sports agents. Like if you were going to help your kid get an NIL deal in Oklahoma before a couple of weeks ago, technically you were supposed to get a license from the state to be a sports agent to do that work for your kid. And so we cleared all that up. So now it's very clear, who can help, how they can help, how these contracts work. One of the things that I think was really important to the coaches is that it makes it clear two things. One, and something I'd never thought of but should have, is that we have protections in here that the coaches can't get sued for benching a player. Because if you got a kid that's got a big money NIL contract and you put that kid on the bench, I mean, that company's going to be mad. They've got an investment out there. And so the law makes it very clear you cannot sue the coach for making coaching decisions.
Is there precedent in that happening somewhere in the country? Because I mean, it wouldn't shock me if there was.
As of yet, no, probably
not yet, but it will. There is no doubt that'll happen. I mean,
did Lincoln get a letter from Spencer Radler's agent? I mean, I'm just saying.
No, I mean, and those are, I mean, seriously, when you start talking about the type of money, I mean, you've seen, some of the numbers that are getting, and you never know if they're true, but I mean, a couple of athletes from LSU in the last few weeks have put up some really big numbers with Sports Illustrated and that type of stuff. I mean, you start talking about $1 million, and then that person sits on the bench and doesn't get any playing time.
Or even if you think maybe the strength and conditioning or the nutrition team, like, overworked them and injured them or
Right.
something like that, like then you start getting into it where it's like you've got the agent hiring his own third party nutrition people or anything like that, go watch the workouts or something like that. How a lot of team, like when a quarterback, like an NFL quarterback, goes to get surgery, like the president of the NFL team and the owner will like be there to like watch, like I feel like that's almost like what could happen. But that's very interesting. Is that the most surprising language that you included?
I think that was, I mean, one of those things that as soon as I read it, I thought, oh, yeah, I mean, that's coming. That lawsuit is coming. Some coach is going to get sued for putting a player on a bench. But to me, that was one. The three that, I mean, and they're all from pretty well, I think, from the university side. There are protections in there that the school can and the coach can limit when you do these things. That if it's a team activity, you don't get to sign a contract that you're going to, live stream team meetings, or, that you're, in the middle of practice, you're going to stop and do a TikTok or whatever. I mean, that, so there are protections in there for team activities. You don't get to do this. And then the one that I hadn't thought of, but makes complete sense, is it's the logo. Can a student athlete get paid just for wearing your school's logo? And can they put that in their NIL deal? I mean, if I sign an NIL deal, can part of it be, OU's logo? And so, kind of just trying to protect all of that, protect OU's brand while allowing the students to have their brand. And, that's a very fine line. And so there's a lot of work going into trying to make sure everybody knows where that line is.
That's yeah. I mean, it's got to be tough, right? Because I mean, I'm glad you guys got it passed so quickly, but like it's got to be tough because it's changing nearly daily. I mean, you talk about doing a TikTok. There was a high school kid that put his phone in his like pocket or like tucked it into a pad and literally went and scored a touchdown on Instagram Live. Like he literally just like streamed the play, like stuff like that. Like it's crazy. It's crazy the way things are going. There's no doubt, but it's interesting because you always, feel like you've got to try and stay ahead of it at least. So, I mean, it's very good news that it seems like we are, at least we're farther ahead than most. Where do you think this puts us? Are we now the best NIL atmosphere in the country? Are we top 5? Are we top 10? What do you think?
From what I understand, we're number 1 in the nation. That we are ahead of everybody else. Now they will catch up, and so this will be the gift that keeps on giving. Next year, I will be running an NIL bill. I don't know what it says yet, but we'll find something that we could have done better, and we'll change that next year. And the year after that, we'll change that. And that's how things like this work. I've been very involved in the medical marijuana stuff in Oklahoma, and I promise you, every year we pass a whole bunch of bills on that subject, fixing whatever mistake we made last year, trying to get this thing right. So there will be another NIL bill next year. I do know one thing that we need to change, and I'm not going to say it here because it's one of those things that when it's a problem. And we're hoping nobody notices it until we have a chance to fix it. So we'll be fixing this forever. But right now we're leading the nation.
Until they all find that thing you got to fix.
And they will. They'll find it. They'll fix it, and we'll fix it next year.
All right, good.
Yeah, it'll all be okay. But yeah,
Okay.
there's already one thing that we saw. It's like, oh crap, we should have closed that little loophole. So we'll get it
Dave
closed.
Rader would have been paying more attention instead of daydreaming about the glory days.
That's right. I mean, if he would have just thrown a pass out of the shotgun instead of running the too tight tee, everything be better.
Amen. Amen. Well, we're gonna do some questions. Obviously, you see the Q&A up there. Just kind of go through the chat a little bit. Kind of back to what Dancing Pastry had said back at 920. So basically, they can discuss things, but just make it clear to recruits. They can discuss things, but just make it clear to recruits on how the rules work. So don't expect something until signed as a player. Like basically just say, hey, this is the atmosphere of NIL here. We're not going to drop a bag of cash off at your porch, but it's going to be the best environment for NIL growth once you sign here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. It is, like I said, it's very, very clear that you cannot actually provide compensation to a prospective athlete. And that's really the end of what it talks about on prospective athletes. And
you can't give them compensation. You could essentially say that you'll get compensation. You just can't give them compensation. Gray area.
It's definitely, yeah. So it's a short sentence. Cannot provide a prospective student athlete with compensation in relation to the use of his or her name, image, and likeness. That's it.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where people will test that gray line and we'll see what happens.
To change the gray right there. It's a lot.
That's very gray. Les asked, did you have to take anything good out of the bill to pass it? Was there anything involving like students being treated as employees or anything like that? I know that's a big thing nationally amongst these, and a lot of different NIL bills kind of treat it differently. But give me kind of your thoughts, on did you have to take anything good out or anything that you liked out, and what that was, and then touch on kind of the students as employees conversation.
Yeah. So no, we did not. We passed it very much the way that it was drafted by the schools. I mean, really the only changes that I made were kind of structural. This is the nerdy way that we do this, so you've got to do it our nerdy way, not your nerdy way, kind of stuff. So none of that. There was no major like, oh man, we can't pass this bill if you keep that language in there. That we didn't have those fights. So the student as employee thing's huge, and it is a really, really big deal for the university because there's so many responsibilities that come with having an employee. The biggest in my mind is the injury side of things. You're at the radio station and you fall and hurt yourself, they're going to provide workers' comp. If star, Dylan Gabriel, gets hurt, he can sue workers' comp and claim workers' comp for lost wages in the NFL, quite possibly, and that's a whole different financial problem if he's an employee as opposed to just. So there's still a very strong line between kind of scholarship money and being a student athlete. And then there's this other thing that those people are doing on the side with their name, image, and likeness. And you don't combine those two things. The school provides scholarships. Somebody else is doing the NIL. It is not the school, but the school can help you find those people, can help you get in touch with those people. And that's where the collective comes in. And that's where this does allow school foundations. And that actually, now that I say that out loud, that's what A&M had gotten involved in, that we had to make sure was clear, is the OU Foundation, the O Club, those, they can play a part now too, and they definitely could not before.
That's with the kind of Richard Turner's question right here. None of this matters if donors do not have or are willing to give. With that, it's kind of like OU has the list of people that give tremendous amounts of money to the university that might be interested in this, right? That way they can kind of patch them through to those collectives. They can kind of go hand in hand with that. But, you know, you being in those circles, talking to university presidents, presidents of hospitals, all these kind of people, like, I'm sure you know your fair share of donors at OU, OSU, this, that, and the other. Do you think that there are donors that have been waiting for something like this in order to deploy those funds, to where it's just a better environment for NIL, as opposed to trying to jump through all these hoops? Do you think maybe, again, funding the collectives or funding NIL programs will be easier now that it's a bit more clear?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of major donors are pretty risk averse people. They don't want to. And again, we'll bring Rhett Bomar up one more time. I mean, that dealership took a beating. And so I think a lot of people don't want to risk getting involved in something that might end up looking shady later. And so I think it's very black and white. These things can happen. This is exactly how they're supposed to happen. So I would think for your risk averse donors, I think it's a lot easier for a collective to talk to them and say, hey, here's the program, here's how it works, here's, why we know this is legal. Here's how we know that you're not going to end up, in the Daily Oklahoman with people making you look bad. So I think it will help for sure with those major donors just feeling a lot more comfortable with where we are now.
Good.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, again, it's activating those funds, right? It's like, you want to make sure these guys didn't get a lot of money by being dumb. And, it's tough because, the university stands to lose some money, right? That's part of this, right? Is if I'm Johnny Oil Boom, and the university counts on my $10 million a year I give to them for, new landscaping and new stainless steel countertops in the cafeteria. Like, I can't, like, if a collective approaches me and say, hey, we need you to snap off $1 million for an entire basketball team worth of, transfers or whatever, like, it's sexier at the country club to brag about the new shooting guard you just brought in as opposed to the new sneeze guard that you just got installed at the cafeteria. So, so with that, I think it's kind of interesting because you're going to have schools fighting it a little bit because they want their money too.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting. You've seen the arms race for facilities for years and years and years now. That's the one place that it was legal to really pamper these athletes. And I mean, if you've been through OU football facilities and all of the things that are provided to those athletes, it'll be really interesting to see if collectives and NIL kind of put an end to the facilities arms race and it becomes an arms race on the NIL side. Because it's the same set of money, I would assume.
Mm.
Yeah, we got a couple questions. JP, you want to hit on them?
Yep, we got a couple questions here, and then figure we do a little bit of this or that. We haven't done that in a long time, so throw that back in there. Topher asked a good one here. Does this bill help the kids get the money over, say, someone in a collective taking a big cut?
Yeah, it does absolutely nothing to regulate the collectives and to put rules on them. That'd be a whole different. We're going to get nerdy here. This bill is in the school section of law. So we're in the section where we do laws about school. If we wanted to do laws on a collective, I think you'd have to go somewhere much more in the general business side of the legal world. So we don't in any way, shape, or form really regulate the collectives at all. In fact, anytime that there's kind of an intersection between whoever's paying the NIL money and the athlete and the school, it's the athlete bringing information to the school or the school bringing information to the athlete. There's really nothing in this law that has the school and the collective. It says that the school can work with, can point their students in a direction, can help them kind of know who to talk to get an NIL contract or to learn about this. But there's some separation. You've got that athlete in between. You've got the school doing the school things. You got the collective doing business stuff, and you got the kid who's part of both of those two worlds.
Do you think we will ever, 10, 20 years from now, do you ever think there will just be an NIL department of the athletic department and there's no third parties anymore and it's just fully implemented, just you basically have, okay, you have your health and nutrition, you have your NIL, you have all this, and you have it in-house because people are sick of trying to run around laws by using collectives?
If you do that, then the student athlete's going to become an employee of the university. Right. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. I think someday that's where we're going to end up. I think, this will always be kind of a muddy thing. And I think at some point there will be a lawsuit and some judge somewhere is going to declare that these student athletes are employees of the university. And at that point it changes everything again. But we'll fight against that as long as we can, because it's my job's to protect the state of Oklahoma. Having the state of Oklahoma on the line financially for injuries to these student athletes who are projected to be number one draft picks, that's a risk that I do not want to volunteer the state of Oklahoma for. That's not in the best interest of the taxpayers.
I like it. One more, and then I'll answer my dad's question. How many new groups or companies like Audience Rent are in Oklahoma? None like Audience Rent, but I think like collective groups or NIL. Do you think that this bill will bring on more collectives because it's easy, because the school can work with them? Do you think it'll consolidate them into one because that's what the school is going to want? What do you think it's going to do to that market?
I don't know. We will find out. I would think that it consolidates it, because it definitely gives the school the ability to tell these guys, hey, call this guy, he'll take care of you. And like we've talked about, I mean, part of that recruiting conversation will be saying, hey, these are the people we work with all the time, talk to them. And so, there will always be people trying to break into it, I think, but I think in large part you're going to see large collectives surrounding each school. That's my guess, at least. We'll see.
JP, you wanted this or that?
Yeah, let's do it. We haven't done it in a while. Kind of honestly reserving that more for the season, but man, we figured since we got the senator on here, we'll do our patented game, this or that. Senator McCortney, we do a game where, basically it's just like it says, it's either this or that. You have to choose one or the other, kind of give you, your dissertation on why. I guess just act for you as if you're trying to pass a bill. So why would you pass this one rather than the other? So we got a couple classic ones here that we've done before and the chat's pretty familiar with, but we probably would like to see how you feel about it. So first one, we like food around here. So ribs or brisket, not the dry brisket you were talking about earlier, but like, the best brisket you can think of. Which one would you rather have? And why?
I'm brisket all the way. Ribs, sometimes you order ribs, there's just not a lot of meat there. You don't know what you're going to get. Brisket, I'll get enough brisket to get full when I order it. And I'm not a small guy, so I want to make sure I get full. I'm going with the brisket, but slice it, man. Don't be chopping my brisket. Sliced brisket. That's just proof that Jesus loves us right there.
Amen.
That's an Okie answer if I've ever heard it. I loved it. Down to the how I want it prepared. I want this much meat, this, that, and the other. I do agree full blown on the sliced brisket versus the chopped. I feel like on the chopped, so many people just add sauce, a bunch of sauce to it to try and get it, and all of a sudden you've got this just mound. I'm like, no, sliced. I can do, if you serve it to me at sliced, I can chop it up from there. I can add sauce from there. I can't take chopped brisket and form it into slices. Like I can't go that way. Once you've chopped it, I can't get it back the other way. But like I said, you give me some sliced brisket, I can make you some chopped.
There you go. That works for me.
Your mom says Davidson ribs, Trev.
Yeah. So my dad has always cooked ribs. We always have ribs and cheesy potatoes for Christmas dinner. So everybody does ham and this. No, not us. Ribs. We do some baked and some smoked. Just to have a couple different options. But yeah, they are good. I can't get on here and not defend my father's ribs. You're not going to catch me doing that. There's no doubt.
Okay.
Smart man.
All right, our next one here is another food classic on the JP and Trav show, talking about wings. Would you rather have flats or drums?
That's a hard one. I'll go with the flats just because I'm pretty good at the whole, just stick the whole thing in your mouth and just pull the meat off and pull the bone. I can kill some flats in no time. Drums, a little more work. So I'll take the flats.
Exactly. You're 2 for 2 so far. The technique is what it comes down to on the flats, and that's what I'll always say. So I think you're kind of after more of like the hammer technique. I believe it's called but I usually take the small bone out, just one simple twist, boom, done, and then one bone in, out clean. So, but yeah, absolutely. Flats, the meat is better. The drums have all kinds of, tendons and cartilage and all kinds of stuff you're eating. So I'm going to flats all day, every day.
I'm also a flats guy, big flats guy. Love it.
A room full of smart people here.
Hey, there you go. Now, our last one.
We should all run for office.
Another classic for you. It has to do with our OU football fandom, as all of us are mega fans here, obviously. Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray? Which one are you going with out of the 2 Heisman winners?
Now are you asking me best quarterback, who I like more?
No, you need a win. You got to have a win.
Got to have a win, a W.
You got them both. Got them both on your sideline. You need to win a big game.
Oh, golly. Oh, that hurts me. See, I just want to. I want to be a good politician. I'm just going to keep asking you questions and narrow. See, is it a run situation? Is it a pass situation?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Are we 4th and 1?
Nope. You got to start.
Where are we on the
game.
field? I'm taking Baker. I'll take Baker every time. I love the dude. Kyler may be the best athlete I've ever seen live and in person. He is a freak of nature. Baker, just the person, the personality, kind of the grit, hey, nobody's going to keep me down. I love me some Bake. That's John. You're right. That's absolutely a filibuster. I'm going to keep talking like 10 more minutes. Try not to say anything at all. It'll be great.
Oh man,
That's hilarious.
It's funny at the camp today. Everybody knows I love me some Brent Venables, no doubt about it. But he does get a bit long-winded at times, and I was sitting there at the camp today, and he was addressing all the campers that were there in their own specific groups. What was the best part was everybody was in their specific groups, like by position. The only one warming up and like actually working out was Beedenbow. Him and his guys. He's like, he got them all lined up. He's running, everything like that. Like, I loved it. But Brent started talking, and I was like, I told the person next to me, it will go unnamed. I was like, somebody's got to get in Brent's office and like switch out his regular size paper for like some like postcard size. Like we got to get him smaller. He's got notes and he's talking for I think he spoke like it felt for like 15 minutes straight about, you do anything like you do everything, the championship strain, the how you live. I mean, he was on one. And it was funny because this person, I tell you, say, oh, he's filibustering again. I'm like, so I didn't expect to see the word filibuster twice today or hear it twice today, but that's what happened. So
I was a pastor. I turned into a politician. So thinking that I'm going to be short-winded and I'm not going to use any microphone you give me that's silly on your part.
That's hilarious.
Hey, we didn't bring you on to be quiet.
I do like that your dad totally is with me on Baker here. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, my mom met Baker at Jackson Newell's wedding. We know the bride's family really well, the Hobarts, and my mom met Baker there, took a picture with him, met Trevor Knight there too, and was like, "Oh, are you the quarterback?" And Trevor pointed to, no, actually, that's the quarterback. I was like, "Oh, that's brutal." Like, actually, that guy took my job, so I had to transfer out. So, but they've always been big Baker folks. But yeah, it's if you need to rally the team, the thing about Kyler is while he was insanely talented, he was a mercenary. That's what it felt like. I mean, obviously his speech at halftime, the spring game was certainly indicative that he didn't feel that way about just being a mercenary. He was all in on it. But yeah, that's the toughest question for any OU fans. Yeah. Obviously, our chat is heavy Baker, but a lot, there's a large segment that think that if we would have played Kyler instead of Baker, down the stretch, that Kyler would have taken us to the national championship game. To which I always reply, was Kyler gonna play linebacker? Well, who was he going to tackle? Because the reason we didn't win a national championship wasn't because of quarterback play. I promise you.
It has not been our offense that's been holding us back. That's for sure.
That's
not
fact.
At all.
Not even last year. So.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate it. We went over a little bit, not too bad. I know I initially told you 30 minutes, but like you said, pastor and a politician, ain't no way. So. Appreciate you coming on. JP, you got anything else?
No, just appreciate you taking the time out of your night, and I know you're a busy man. Appreciate you stopping by and speaking to us about the bill, and you're welcome back anytime, man. We appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a ton of fun. This is a lot more fun than most of the things that I have to do. So I talk about nerdy healthcare stuff, or we can talk about Sooner football. I'll take Sooner football every time.
It is funny you say that because we got some people commenting like, first time I've ever been interested in politics. First time, like, it's just funny because it's like this isn't, yes, it's very like it is politics, but it's about OU football recruiting essentially and OU football retention essentially. So it's funny because I'm sure you've encountered far different sets of people working on this one as opposed to a lot of your healthcare and general business type stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe they'll stick around and vote on other stuff. Who knows?
Maybe. It cracked me up when you guys started tweeting about me being on. I get a text from my nephew. It's like, hey, I just saw a tweet and nobody was saying anything bad about you. It's the first time I've ever seen your name on Twitter when people weren't flaming you. In the replies, and I was like, well, they hadn't met me yet. We'll see what happens when this thing's over.
It's a lifelong politician.
Incredible. Well, I appreciate it, Greg. We're going to wrap up.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yep. See you guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
All right, guys. So that was Senator Greg McCourtney, and definitely great to get him on there, and felt like it was very informative, very informative conversation. How about you, Trev?
Loved it. Gave us lot more time than I even imagined that he would, and yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm really encouraged to learn that OU was the reason behind this bill. Like OU approached the state Senate to say, hey, look, we have come up with this NIL plan. We need you to pass a law to protect our NIL plan. Like that's like people talk about Joe C being a gangster. That is some gangster ass shit.
That's some mob boss.
Gangster. Like that, you know how mob it is to have politicians put laws into place to protect you. That's like like straight out of mafia movies. Like that's incredible. So yeah, I mean, again, it shows you where OU's head is at on this and how seriously they're taking NIL and how they're trying to be on the forefront of it. So I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great breakdown of the bill and how we're going to be able to utilize it. Like you said, the fact that OU is the major player in it was pretty awesome to hear. Obviously, guys, we're going to get out of here. We've been over here a little bit over an hour. So, we'll talk about, some more stuff when it comes to recruiting and the camp and everything probably next week. And hopefully, this time next week, maybe we're not having a show because, we're going to be watching OU softball in the national championship game, potentially winning game 2. Who knows? But obviously they won 2-0 today against Stanford, against probably the best pitcher that they've seen the whole year. She was a beast. Travis saw it in person. They'll play Tennessee on Saturday at 3 p.m. And that'll be, again, as Senator McCortney said earlier, kind of, fun storylines there. Mackenzie Donahue being at shortstop for Tennessee, and, she's won national championship with OU. So plenty of storylines to talk about, and I'm sure we'll get to it all next week and have a lot to talk about. Trav, you got anything, man?
Nope. I'll be off to actually, they're not doing camp tomorrow, so I'm staying here with my buddy Doobie. So if I can get a crowbar and pry him away from a little bit of his work, might go have lunch or something and then go do radio from 3 to 6. Tune into KREF, the home of Sooner fans, tomorrow from 3 to 6. We'll be talking softball, recruiting, camp, all that kind of stuff. So
great. All right, y'all. Well, we'll see you here maybe at this time next week. Boomer.